a very good afternoon to all of you. Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon, Jai Hind. I hope each one of you are doing great. Now, today in this session, we are about to discuss another very important topic, that is the chapter 5, understanding the marginalization. Okay. Now, today we will be dealing with this fourth unit of social justice and marginalized. So, before starting off with this session, many of you would have the doubt that, sir, how this topic is relevant for us to while we are preparing for Indian polity. So let me tell you, this topic will give you an understanding about the rights of minorities and the marginalized groups in the country, and what essentially the steps have been taken. How about the concept for the welfare of minorities and the marginalized groups has been made part of the Indian Constitution. Clear? So all of you who are joining me now, so I welcome each one of you. So please do let me know in the comment section, am I audible loud and clear? In this session, we would start off with chapter 5 of class 8th NCERT for Indian polity. Clear? So now the bigger question for all of you comes is that, what do you mean by marginalization? Can anyone tell me what do you mean by marginalization and what essentially are the characteristics of marginalization? So basically, if we talk about this concept of marginalization, characteristics in this marginalization are some very typical characteristics. Okay, we would see somebody who is marginalized. Okay, then usually that individual is excluded from participation. This is the one very common feature that we see with respect to people who have been marginalized. Okay, those people are often considered unequal. Okay, these are some common traits. Okay, now these people are stereotyped. Okay, these are stereotyped, and structurally we always associate some structural barriers with them. Okay, structural barriers like the barrier with respect to their legal laws and customs, economic practices, the social systems. So there are a few characteristics which are often correlated with the marginalized section. And why this often occurs? Because of a few historical processes, the economic and political conditions, the economic and political exclusion, the power imbalance that has existed for long. So in this we will see that there are essentially various marginalized groups. Okay, moreover, we have also seen that marginalized sections, okay, are further categorized into various types. Okay, now when we talk about different types of marginalized section, then the groups are socially marginalized. Okay, there are certain groups which are isolated from community lives and the social network. Okay, we can see marginalization on the basis of economic conditions. Okay, due to barriers of employment, income, financial systems, you will find various marginalized sections. Then you will also find a few sections that are politically marginalized. Okay, so by and large, there are variety of marginalized sections. Okay, and due to certain forms of marginalization, the people have to suffer in a various manner. Okay, there is reduced access to education, healthcare, employment. There is increased poverty in those societies. The isolation, the social isolation is high. These people, they end up losing their cultural identity. They do not have cohesion with the other communities, and there are multiple long term disadvantages which are imposed upon them and passes on to them from generation to generations. Clear? So marginalization, if I have to break it down, if I have to summarize it, it is a systematic process that excludes certain groups from complete participation in the society. And due to this marginalization, or due to this restriction from participation in the society, they are often unequally treated in the form of socio-economic and political structures. Clear? Okay. So we would be now discussing about the marginalized sections or the marginalization that has been happening. Now this topic very uh, beautifully, it highlights our stereotyping. Okay, it highlights how do we perceive marginalized sections. Okay, this topic very nicely tells us that there have been prejudices in our minds around various sections of societies or about their culture, their practices and their customs. Okay, now what essentially does it mean to be socially marginalized? Okay, now before moving on to the social marginalization, okay, we must also see that marginalization, if we have to talk about a few characteristics of it, okay, these groups are often seen as different groups, different from the mainstream. And why they are different from the mainstream? Because of their language, because of their custom, because of their religion, because of their caste, because of their economic status, and many more things. Okay. Now, these differences, they often lead to various forms of social exclusion. Clear? So, we will see that there are differences that leads to exclusion. Clear? Moreover, due to this exclusion, they have to face multiple forms of disadvantages, okay, and powerlessness. We will see, we have seen that these marginalized sections, they lack access to resources, okay, and that is something that impacts them chronically, that gives them a chronic disadvantage. Okay, there are prejudices and stereotyping. So marginalized communities are frequently subjected to stereotypes and prejudices which wrongly justifies the discrimination and also perpetuates their subordinate status. Okay, this is the reason why these marginalized sections, they often lose their identity. Okay, and this cycle of marginalization just goes on and on. Clear? So if we take an example of the marginalized sections, okay, so we can take an example of the tribals, we can take the examples of the Adivasis. Okay, so even if you will understand that, if as a student, if you move to some other place, okay, if you have moved to some other state, if you have moved to some other place, okay, you will find yourself different from the natives of those region. And at times, if you have a different language, okay, if you look different, okay, if your cultural practices are different, then there may be situation that you may not be considered fit amongst your peers. Okay, and we have essentially seen that in the social environment as well, the groups of people or communities may have the experience of being excluded. Okay, their marginalization can be because they speak different language, they follow different customs, or they have different religious beliefs. Okay, now the question is that do they have different religious belief? Okay, as a whole, not, but with respect to the majority community that has been existing there. Clear? So we can understand one thing, that this sense of difference and this exclusion, it leads to communities not having access to resources and opportunities, and their ability and their inability rather to assert their rights that are uh, available to them. Clear? So thus we have to understand that this marginalization is at times, is very often experienced in one sphere. Okay, it is experienced across economic, social, cultural, and political factors. Okay, and when they all come together into play, the community, they start to be feeling as marginalized. Clear? So in this session, in this chapter, the author has given a very beautiful example, okay, about the Adivasis and their marginalization. Okay, now Adivasis. Okay, if this word has to be literally interpreted, do you know what does this term Adivasi mean? Okay, now if I all anytime take up this term before any group of people, people will tell Adivasis means the tribal. So this is the general perception that is formed. But do you know that the literal meaning of this term Adivasi, it means the original inhabitants. Okay, the communities who have lived and they often continue to live. Okay, the original inhabitants of the region around the forest. Okay, so this Adivasi means the original inhabitants, but how do we have pushed them to a marginalized section of society? We can understand it, and this is an example that almost all of us would correlate well. Okay, now this topic shares a very beautiful story about an Adivasi family, okay, that is living in Delhi. Now, there are two girls, Soma and Helen, who are watching the Republic Day parade on the television with their grandfather. Now, on that, you might have seen that in the Republic Day parade, you would have seen tableaus of all states, of all major departments, of all prominent things in the country. Okay, but in this Republic Day tableau, okay, a very common thing all of you might have seen around the Adivasis was noticed by these two girls, Helen and Soma, as well. Okay. While watching this tableau, they noticed that the Adivasi tableau is arriving and they have shown Adivasis dancing in their native dresses, native attire. Okay. So, whenever we talk about Adivasis, we just stereotype them with people who are limited to forests, who are limited to the produce of the forest. Okay, and in the while watching this tableau, these two girls also notice the same, along with their grandfather, that whenever Adivasis have to be depicted, they just depict them with scanty clothes and dancing. Okay, so the people do not know about the lives of Adivasis. The lives of Adivasis are also very rich, and most people do not know about that. Okay, now their grandfather tells them their uh, their his life history. Okay, he tells them that when he was young, they all lived in a village in Odisha. The village was very beautiful. They got everything needed for them from their land itself. Okay, they were respected in their region. They had access to forest, they had rivers. Okay, but suddenly the forest was also being occupied by the migrants. Okay, the forest officials started telling them that they have to move out from their places. The contractors who are outsiders, they started coming to those villages. When the natives, they protested against them, they started beating them up. Okay, and then they took them to the law courts, wherein their lands were being confiscated, but they could not fight back because the law courts, okay, there were no people to fight for their cause. Okay, so this essentially was things that have happened previously with them. Okay, now companies, they started to come there in the name of development. Okay, the outsiders started coming to their forest, and people started telling them that this region is rich in iron ores. Okay, so they promised them jobs and money, but only when, if the natives, they sold their lands to them. Now these Adivasis, these tribals, they are very much associated with their roots. Okay, they feel that their land is everything. Okay, it is uh, it is their deity, is the harvest, is the only thing that they have lived for. Okay, and they closely associate themselves with their roots. Okay, now these outsiders who came to their villages, they took their thumbprints, they took their lands. Okay, and they were given token jobs. Okay, now in this situation, they were threatened, they were beaten up. Okay, and forcefully their lands were confiscated. Okay, so this was something that when outsiders started going to the region of the natives, the Adivasis lost their land, and these Adivasis had just meager amount of money to survive. Okay, so it was during this situation they have seen that all the people were displaced, and when they got jobs, those jobs were only symbolic jobs with token amount. Okay, now when these people, they started moving to cities, their money hardly lasted for some time. Okay, they had no means of livelihood, and they were all restricted to tiny rooms. Okay, now the grandfather tells these girls, Helen and Soma, that when their father got the job, it was then that they had started to survive in this region. Okay, and this was the reason why these two girls did not go to school for very long time, because they did not have any means of livelihood. Moreover, these girls had also faced forms of discrimination in the schools, because when they went to the schools, they were discriminated because they had different languages, they had different cultures, they were not able to speak up the local languages of those cities. Okay, these girls were well versed with the Santhali language, even though gradually they learned the local languages and also had learned the English language. So this is how we have seen various examples of marginalization taking place around the Adivasis. Clear? So we have seen that this is how that these Adivasis, they have lived and they have sustained. Okay. Now Chalam Reddy says Adi from the beginning, Vasi to leave. So the term Adivasi means to live from the. Yes, bilkul, absolutely correct. Chalam. Okay, Adivasi means the people who have been living from the starting, from the beginning. Very good. Now, this topic essentially talks about these Adivasis, the communities. Okay, it tells that around 8% of India's population is Adivasi, and many of India's most important mining and industrial centers are located in the Adivasi areas. Areas like Jamshedpur, Raurkela, Bokaro, Bhilai, amongst others. Okay, along with this, okay, the Adivasis are not homogeneous population. There are over 500 different Adivasi groups in India, and they are particularly numerous. Okay, in states like Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, and Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal, and various northeastern region as well. Okay, now these Adivasi societies, they are very distinctive societies because they have very little hierarchy amongst them. Now, this is the reason why they are radically different from the communities organized around principles of jati or varn, because they were being ruled by the kings. Okay, under Adivasi practices, their belief system is different. Okay, from other religions. They often involve the worship of their ancestors, their village, their nature spirits. Okay, and they are associated with the region in which they have lived. Okay, they have association with the landscape, mountains, rivers, animals, and these village spirits, they are often worshipped at specific sacred groves within the village boundary, while the ancestral ones are usually worshipped at homes. Okay, so Adivasi culture is very different. Okay, Adivasis have always been influenced by different surrounding religious practices of Shakt, Buddhist, Vaishnav, Bhakti, Christianity later on, and simultaneously Adivasi religion themselves have influenced the dominant religion of empires around them. Okay, so for example, we have seen the Jagannath cult of Odisha and Shakti and Tantric traditions in Bengal and Assam. Moreover, around the 19th century, large number of Adivasis converted to Christianity, and this has emerged as a prominent religion in the current modern Adivasi history. Adivasis have their own language, okay, and they have very deep. This is very deeply influenced. It has influenced the formation of mainstream Indian languages like the Bengali, Santhali, which has the largest number of speakers and have significant body of publication, including magazines and internet. Also has have got various articles around these. Okay, now this topic also talks about the stereotyping that is done around the Adivasi. So in this session also, in this topic earlier also, they have given an example about how people depict Adivasis living off very less forest produce, wearing less clothes prominently made through the forest goods, and always dancing. So this is how the stereotyping has been carried out. We have seen people stereotyping Adivasis with colorful costumes, headgear, and in their prominent ways of dancing. Okay, now people often say that Adivasis lack advancement. Okay, and they are resistant to change or new ideas, but this is not the case. Okay, primarily why they have been resistant, because they do not want their cultural identities to be changed. Okay, we have seen that in the Adivasi regions, okay, metal ores like iron, copper, gold, silver, coal, diamonds, they all are available. Okay, and in addition, the continuation of the life has depended heavily upon the forests. Clear? Uh, yeah, Challamji, no, there is no prominent difference. Okay, whatever you have said and whatever we have been discussing, that is relatively similar. Okay, okay. Now, in addition to the continuation of life, okay, it has prominently depended heavily on forest. Okay, now this is why the forest have got significance. They help recharge many of India's rivers. Okay, and this is essentially very clear, and it is very crucial. Okay, forest has covered major part of our country until the 19th century, and Adivasis had deep knowledge of access to as well as control over most of the vast tracts, at least till the middle of 19th century. Okay, so we have seen that these regions were not ruled by large states and empires. Instead, often empires heavily depended on Adivasis for the crucial access to the resources. Clear? So if we understand the Adivasi culture, we will understand that this is very contrary to the image of Adivasis as today has been projected. Okay, Adivasis these days are being projected as marginal and powerless communities. Okay, but in the pre-colonial era, Okay, we have essentially seen that in the pre-colonial era, they were traditionally ranged hunter-gatherers and nomads and had lived by shifting agriculture and also cultivating in one place. Okay, so Adivasis have been increasingly forged through economic changes, forest policies, and political force applied by the state as well as the private industries. And this is the reason why Adivasis have to migrate to other places. Okay, and when they migrate, they have to live their life as workers in plantation. They have to live as workers at the construction sites. They have to work in the industries and as domestic workers. Okay, so this is the reason why, since they have been forced to migrate, this is the reason why for the very first time in the entire history, they do not have direct access to the forest territories, which was essentially their original place of habitation. Clear? So we have to acknowledge this, that why Adivasis are marginalized, why they have been suffering, because the forest lands have been cleared for use in the name of urbanization. The forests have been cleared of timber, and this is essentially giving the raw material for agriculture as well as the other industries. Adivasis have also lived in areas which are rich in minerals and other natural resources. Clear? And these are taken over by mining and other industrial projects in this region. Moreover, it has to be noticed that powerful forces have come up together and they have taken up the tribal lands. Okay, and much of this time the land is taken away forcefully and procedures are not followed. Okay, even according to the original figures, more than 50% of persons displaced due to mines and mining projects are tribals. Okay, and other recent survey recently has reported that working among Adivasis shows that 79% of the persons displaced from states of Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, and Jharkhand are also tribals. Okay, huge tract of the tribal land is militarized in the northeastern region. Okay, huge tracts of their land have also gone under the waters of hundreds of dams that have been built in the independent India. So we have to summarize this thing, that the tribals or the Adivasis have been suffering only because they have been forcefully made to migrate from their original places of habitation. Okay, this is the reason why they have lost their lands, and access to the forest means that tribals have lose their main source of livelihood and food. Okay, and they have gradually lost access to their traditional homelands, and many Adivasis have migrated to cities in search of work where they are employed for very low wages in the local industries or at building construction site. Clear? So why Adivasis have been pushed to poverty? Because their lands have been taken away. Okay, now when Adivasis are displaced from their land, they lose much more than their source of income. Okay, they ultimately are losing their traditions, they are losing their customs. Okay, customs by the way of losing their way of living. Okay, their farming lands have been taken away. Okay, they have to leave their houses. Okay, their cremation grounds have been taken away, their temples have been taken away, their wells, their ponds have been taken away, and essentially we can see that all this in the name of development. Clear? So we have seen that there is in India there exists an interconnectedness between economic and social dimensions of the tribal life. Okay, if you destruct one sphere, okay, the other would be naturally affected. Okay, and this process of dispossession and displacement is very painful and very violent for the Adivasis. Okay, so these various sections, these various ideologies we have seen. Okay, along with this, in this first chapter, okay, we had read about the minorities also. Okay, now our constitution is providing safeguards to religious and linguistic minorities. Okay, but there is a bigger question that why these safeguards are being provided to the minorities. The term minority most commonly is used to refer to the areas, okay, this term minority is most commonly used to refer to communities that are numerically small in relation to the rest of the population. Okay, so we have seen, okay, in the previous topics as to why minorities have been suffering, why the safeguards are needed to protect a minority. Okay, because their culture has been dominated by the majority. Okay, these safeguards also protect them against any discrimination and disadvantages that they may face. Okay, now why do they face disadvantages? Due to certain conditions, communities that are smaller in number relative to the rest of the society, they feel insecure about their lives, their assets, and their well being. And this sense of insecurity may get accentuated if the relations between minority and majority is not properly balanced. Clear? So, this is the reason that our constitution provides safeguards, because the constitution is committed to protect India's diversity, and constitution's aim is to promote equality as well as justice to all. Clear? So previously in this topic of judiciary we have read about this. Okay. Moreover, uh, there have been various minorities in the country. Okay, now we have seen that minorities, why are they discriminated? Because they have their different style of living. Okay, their socio-economic development is relatively lower. Okay, and essentially we have also seen that their access to basic amenities in some areas is also less in comparison to the majorities. Clear? So this is how we need to understand that how minorities have been working and how minorities have been suffering. Clear? So these are some basic things that we need to understand. Okay. Now, if we have to also see, there are various other things. Okay, like what all are the constitutional safeguards. Okay, now our constitution gives some legal safeguards, okay, for the marginalized sections. Okay, so first if we talk about the Adivasis, we have got constitutional safeguard in the 5th schedule. Okay, the 5th schedule deals with the administration, okay, and the control of scheduled areas and tribal areas, okay, in the entire country except the states which are in the 6th schedule. Okay, so 6th schedule essentially talks about the 4 states of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. Okay, and we have seen that the 5th schedule, the 6th schedule, they talk about it. Okay, moreover we have seen that under article 46 of the constitution also, okay, under directive principles of state policy, the directions are given to the state to promote with special care the educational and economic interest of the weaker section of society, especially the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Okay, moreover these provisions have been brought into the constitution to protect them from social injustice and the forms of exploitation. Clear? Moreover, we have also seen the PISA Act. Okay, the provisions of Panchayati Raj Extension to Scheduled Areas Act 1996, the PISA Act. So it extends the provision of Part 9 Panchayati Raj to the scheduled areas, and it empowers the Gram Sabhas in the scheduled areas with significant power over resources, forest produce, okay, and the alienation and development schemes. Clear? Along with this, Acha, Rishabh has a doubt that, sir, for UPSC, CSC, can I skip 9 to 12th NCERT Political Science and Bear Act? I had only completed Lakshmikant. Is that sufficient? Rishabh, NCERTs would play a very, very important role for your mains part. Okay. Moreover, don't skip all. At least go through with the 11th and 12th NCERTs. Okay. They would be of great help. Clear? Chaliye. But otherwise, I'll be covering all the NCERTs. So just you can go through these lectures and they will give you complete gist of NCERTs. Okay. You can also watch the lectures at higher speeds, and that would also help you. Okay. Chaliye. Now, this topic also talks about the marginalization of Muslims. Okay. So, Muslims and the marginalization. So, if we talk about the Muslims, okay, the Muslims constitute the largest minority community in the country. Okay. And approximately over 14% of population as per 2011 census is of Muslims. Okay, so despite being a significant segment, various studies and reports have highlighted that their socio-economic and educational backwardness is very significant, and it also indicates a form of marginalization. Okay, so marginalization of Muslims have also been noticed. Okay, it was in 2006 the Sachar committee report came. Okay, now this committee was constituted during the times of Manmohan Singh ji. Okay, and under Justice Sachar, okay, a committee was set up to report on socio-economic and educational status of Muslim community. Okay, so we have seen that there have been various steps that have been taken. Okay, the government has taken up various initiatives after the Sachar committee report. Okay, Prime Minister came up with a 15-point program. Okay, there were multi-sectoral development program that was launched in 2008, and later on it was called the Pradhan Mantri Jan Vikas Karyakram. Okay, there have been various scholarship programs for the minority sections, and there have been various skill development, okay, programs that have come up. Clear? So in country, we have seen that there have been various marginalized group. We have in this topic talks about Adivasis, it talks about the Muslims. Okay. Moreover, we have others marginalized sections, okay, like scheduled caste. Okay, but the constitution has come up with various safeguards. Okay, Article 17 that abolishes the untouchability. We have got women who are also marginalized, they are also vulnerable to exploitation. Okay, there have been various provisions that have been made for them. Along with them, we have got persons with disabilities. Okay, so there have been multiple marginalized sections acknowledged by the government. Okay, and various interventions have been brought in to address the marginalization. Okay, the constitutional provisions play a very important role. The legal provisions have been playing a very important role. Clear? So this topic essentially talks about all of these things about the marginalization and how marginalization has been intervened, what have been their causes, and what is the probable solutions. Clear? Rishabh has got one more doubt. Sir, then if I complete NCERT and Lakshmi, that would be fine. No, that would be fine, Rishabh. That would be fine. You can, instead of going through bare acts, you can just go through some recent decisions. Okay. Now, always remember, bare act, reading bare act and interpreting bare acts, okay, is not very relevant. Okay, because in the examination, in the civil services examination, it is primarily the outcomes of the Supreme Court decisions that is mainly asked. Clear? So there is no point in going through the bare acts of the Constitution. Clear? So if you are going through basic NCERTs and Lakshmikant, that would suffice. Along with it, go ahead with the recent interpretations of the Supreme Court judgments. Clear? Chaliye. So do join me in my Telegram channel. Herein I'll share the PDFs of all of my sessions. Along with it, there is an offer going on for you, the Guru Kripa offer. And in this offer, StudyIQ IAS is offering 50% off and double validity on all the courses. Along with this offer gives you chance of getting mentored by the successful candidates, by the rankers themselves. Okay. So in our smart model of preparation that offers you a complete ecosystem of preparation and assessment with regular interventions, now you can get mentorship by the rankers themselves. Okay. So you just have to use this code SRM Live to avail maximum discount on your preparation. Okay. And make sure that the right time to start your preparation is today. Okay. Do not waste any moment further. Do not waste your time over random PDFs and random videos. Okay. So these courses in a very structured form will help you prepare in the most holistic manner. Clear? Chaliye. So thank you.